Well, listen, I am super excited to chat a little bit. Ally is such a challenger and continues to be such a disruptor in the banking industry. So, what I'd love to do, even though this is about setting the stage for 2022, to jump right in, I think before we can even think about 2022, Ally's done some amazing work, even launching a brand new campaign in 2021 in October. So, as we think about the future, I'd love to revisit the past a little bit and talk about how that's going to help set the stage for next year, but more importantly, why that's been such a meaningful campaign for Ally.
Yeah, Lisa, when we entered the year, I would say our brand has had a very distinct creative style. It's always had this clever wit. It's always challenged and kind of pushed off of the category, and it's always been very thought provoking, trying to get people to question why they accept what they accept relative to um, kind of the norms in the financial services category. And in the last couple of years, our feeling was, especially going into last year, the mood of the country was significantly changed. You had social unrest, you had political turmoil, everybody was fighting with everybody. There was just so much, you had a global pandemic. There was so much angst in the atmosphere that we just felt we needed to go a different direction with our work. And we really needed to lean more into the emotion that the brand was invoking in terms of the way we showed up for people during the pandemic, the way that we showed up during social unrest, the way that our heart came through in the things that we did and the deeds that we put out into the world. And so it really left us with wanting a tone change and wanting a different approach. And that was the impetus for the new campaign, and this notion that in a world that is very conflicted, that everybody's better off with an ally. And that really led to this new work. And the new work is about bringing to life how money intersects every moment in your life, even when you don't realize it, from birth to death to everything in between. And using the ally words to bring that to life was a way that put us in the center of all of those conversations. So we really looked at this work as the most important work we've done. Honestly, in our history, we think that this is our signature campaign. Everything that we shot was shot with real people. There are no actors. They're all real moments. And I think it underscores just how the brand has hit this tipping point, I think, of cultural relevance, particularly in this category. And so we're in a really great place with the work that I'm pretty excited about.
I would think so. And I think the other word that really comes to mind is just how authentic that is. When we
Mhm.
think about particularly this last year of everything that individually we've all gone through. So going a little bit deeper though, these experiences and the real moments, but there's also, making sure that you can reach and have that wide reach. So I'd be curious how you use technology to help support all of these, the creative side of everything you did and the building of those experiences and the moments. But then where does technology come in to help you scale and reach as many people as possible?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're all wrestling with this as marketers right now, is the media fragmentation, the complexity of reaching consumers in a way that demonstrates and adds value to them. It's hard. It's harder than it's ever been. And you have to utilize technology in ways that not only can help your brand scale, but also can be additive from a consumer experience standpoint. And so we've thought about that across a number of different dimensions. I think the first dimension is around engagement, and we've really been very progressive about the utilization of virtual reality, augmented reality, have pushed really hard into things like gamification as ways to engage consumers in an interesting aspect that allows them to really interact with our brand in a fun way. financial education, financial literacy isn't the sexiest thing in the world, but it's something that everybody really needs to know about. And finding ways that you can get people interested in a daunting subject through the utilization of these technologies has been a really successful strategy for us. And the second thing is we have an incredible amount of data and information as banks at our fingertips. We've created tools like our smart savings tools, for instance, where our customers can actually bucket what they're saving for, and they name these buckets. We have well over 1 million buckets that consumers have developed. And it allows us to go into the data and see what people are saving for, what's important to them, and then to be able to create messaging around that connects with what our customers are telling us is important to them. And then obviously third is just the utilization of ad tech and martech in terms of how it's helping us with workflow, but also in terms of our ability to create work dynamically, our ability to A/B test, our ability to optimize and pull work out of the marketplace that isn't working, and to really just reach consumers with the right message at the right time in the right place. And so those are the things that we've really leaned into from a technological standpoint.
And that is, I think, a great setup as we think about some of the moving into some of the trends and predictions. And it's fairly widely known that Ally has made the decision to in-house programmatic and creative. And your last 2 points really seem to align with that, the intersection of data and creative, and then the importance of optimizations, A/B testing, really being flexible and fluid.
Right.
So not to put words in your mouth, but would love to learn from you as you're thinking about going deeper into this in-housing strategy. What are some of the kind of key takeaways and challenges that you're facing, and what are you looking to accomplish really or expand upon in 2022?
Yeah, so first I think it's around creating the right guardrails around what should be done in-house and what should be done with external partners. We have amazing partners. Anomaly's our lead creative agency. RGA is really our kind of our new technologies partner, and MediaCom is our media partner. And I think that we are trying to lean into the sweet spots of the things that they do best and bring in-house the things that we felt we needed more control over so that we could respond at the speed of culture and at the speed that our consumers are demanding from us. So we've in-housed digital planning and buying, we've in-housed content creation and distribution. And those are the things, and we've brought in-house a lot of what I'll call the media planning oversight. We have an amazing team that we've brought in that's really helping connect the dots across all of the totality of our media planning. And obviously you mentioned, programmatic, which is a part of that digital in-housing. The things that we're learning are one, you've got to, aside from finding the right sweet spot for what should be in-house, you've got to set up the right set of expectations. We've partnered really closely with the agencies to bring it in-house over a period of time. We didn't just flip a switch one day and say, okay, you used to do it, we're going to do it now. There's a learning curve. There's a huge lift in terms of data ingestion, in terms of testing, et cetera. So that's been a huge learning for us. I think secondarily has been human capital, hiring the right people that bring a variety of experiences and specialties, but also being really careful to know that you've got to keep these people motivated, because many of them are coming from agencies, as I did. I spent 20 years on the agency side, where you're used to having variety in what you work on every day. And when you're only working on one brand, that variety can become very stale. And so really creating the right atmosphere of creativity and bringing in people that really have that deep desire to be highly focused on propelling and igniting one brand. And then lastly, I think it's been around having the right partners around the table.
Sure.
Companies like you guys,
Mhm.
partners like the trade desk and others that have been instrumental in not only teaching us, but understanding our mission and being able to add value in meaningful ways so that we're not adding additional costs when we were in the mode of trying to find efficiencies for reinvestment. And that
Mhm.
could be very easy to do if you become highly diffuse relative to the number of partners you bring in. So finding the right partners that are on the journey with you
Sure.
is what's critically important.
I I agree, and thank you for the compliment. Going back to your point about human capital and the right partners, right? I think all of us have experienced, the great resignation, but just hiring, retaining just talent, right? Like
Yeah.
that's certainly a trend that we'll all be talking about in 2022. So how do those great partners around the table really help you with that human capital piece? Do they help you, right? What is that intersection of those aspects of your journey?
Yeah, and this may just be my bias from my agency background. I've always hated when I was on the agency side, I always hated when clients called us vendors. We're agencies are partners. Whoever you bring in to surround your brand, whether it's an agency or a technology company or anything, a media company, you need to think about them as part of the family of the brand. And you have to use the tools that they bring, the passion that they bring for the brand as an extension of your team and think of it in that regard. And we have been very careful to select the right partners and then to distribute the work in a way that recognizes what we know we're really good at and what we know they're really good at,
Yeah.
and to give them the freedom to run with the things that they're really good at. And that's really how we think about the partner model in this so for instance, I'll give you a great example. We can't hire content creators fast enough, even though we're in housing content. And so we've really leaned into tier one, which is our PR agency, who has an incredible staff of writers, um, and really know our space to be an extension of our team and help us create content with the speed and the efficacy that we needed. And so that's how we look at the model. It's a distributed model, leaning into the things that we do well and really tapping our partners for the things that we know they do really well.
Yeah, because I think, you said one of my favorite words that I talk about is speed, right?
Right.
Because you had brought up a great point that I guess I had never thought of, is that as important as financial literacy is, it's also really uncomfortable. And
Right.
so being able to find allies, but also, make sure that messaging reaches consumers and with the right speed and the right accuracy, right? To help with that. So keeping that in mind, knowing that, not all of us want to sit down and do a budget or learn more or save for the house or any of the other major life stages or non-major life stages where finance plays a role. What are some of the best ways that you've been able to drive innovation and engagement through platforms to really accomplish what can be sometimes an uncomfortable conversation?
Yeah, I mean, like I always say, my team is probably, if any of them are listening, they get so sick of hearing me say this, right? But the three most important things in your life are your health, your family, and your money.
Yeah.
And not your money in terms of the materialistic things that you want to go buy, although that's certainly a component of it. But in terms of the things that it empowers you to do in your life, and you need to know how to manage it. You need to know how to care for it. You need to know how to grow it, regardless of how much or how little that you have. And so I think banks have a responsibility to teach consumers that, not to preach, but to teach.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to engage people on because, as we talked about, one, it can be daunting, two, it can be overwhelming, and three, it's not fun. Who wants to sit down and talk about money all day? And so I think there's some interesting things that have occurred that we've been able to intersect. One is really the rise of financial influencers, whether they're on platforms like Reddit or TikTok, where there are natural conversations already happening, natural conversations that are happening about our brand. I mean, when I take an example, look at a platform like Reddit, there are hundreds of conversations where Ally is already a part of those, not of our own volition, but of the user's volition. And we can intersect those conversations and we can bring additional value there. We've done that quite a bit and have enjoyed a wonderful relationship with Reddit. So using platforms in a smart way where the conversation's already happening is one of the ways we've done that. The second thing that we've done is I mentioned it briefly, we've leaned really heavily into gamification. Yeah. And we've found natural ways to get people to enjoy learning about money. So I'll give you one example. We partnered with Hasbro, and we licensed the Monopoly game. And prior to the pandemic, we turned 6 cities in America into live Monopoly games. And we used virtual reality to bring Mr. Monopoly to life. People got to play the game on life-size boards all across the cities that they were in. They won prizes every single day. And when we approached Hasbro, they said to us, it's interesting. You're the first bank that figured out we're a game about banking in our 100-year history. You're the first ones that have come to us and wanted to do a partnership. We built an island in Animal Crossing. We didn't go out to Nintendo and license something. We just went in like any player would do and built an island in Animal Crossing that was branded Ally. And we had, thousands and thousands of engagements as a result. In fact, I think we broke the game when we launched. So I could go on and on with examples, but those are the ways that we've found to make learning about finance fun. We've written a series of children's books that we read at elementary schools. We've created a world in Minecraft called Fintropolis. So it's not just even focusing on customers that are in the market. We're starting as early as elementary school aged kids and trying to democratize the learning of financial literacy.
And that was actually, I'm glad you bring that up, because that was the point I wanted to circle back on, because there's some questions already coming in, and it was just, how does purpose play a role? Because so much of gamification is geared towards a younger audience. Lots of times this audience can't open up an account. Right. So it would be interesting to hear your perspective of why that really matters to your purpose from the lens of marketing and potentially even your brand identity.
Well, we were born out of purpose. And I think that's one of the things that makes us really differentiated as a brand, is we have, if you think about when we launched in the midst of the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. And the impetus for creating the brand was around the idea that the world didn't need another bank, but the world needed a better bank. And we took this huge bet around digital financial services. We launched the same year as the smartphone launched, which is kind of hard to believe because we probably all feel like we've lived with our smartphones for our entire life, and some of us have, not me. And when you're born out of that purpose, which was to create a better experience in this category, then that can be a bedrock or a touchstone that you always come back to. And that is how our purpose has been infused in everything that we do from a marketing perspective. We've used that purpose to try and change the trajectory of people's lives, whether it's underserved or underbanked consumers, whether it's younger consumers that aren't taking control of their financial future, whether it's customers that even, know enough to be dangerous, and everything in between. And so everything's born out of that purpose, which is to be a relentless ally for people's financial well-being. And it's clarity of that that has allowed us, I think, to develop such strength in terms of brand tone, the way we show up, where we show up, and the authenticity relative to the way that we, the way that we show up in the world.
Yeah. So how would you say you really balance that? Because you are still in financial with like ROI, right? So you've got, so I mean, if we think about, so many marketers are driven by outcomes and are held to outcomes. And so this purpose-driven approach versus ROI, how as a, chief marketing officer, does that really weigh into your decision-making and, a lot of your go forward, particularly in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, of course, but the way that I think about ROI and measurement is that there's a continuum of measurement, and the best companies understand that there are things that you have to invest in to feed the brand, grow the brand,
Sure.
Increase the buzz and the likability of the brand, and just become a tip of tongue brand. And that spectrum starts over here and goes all the way to just hardcore account openings and, getting accounts to be opened, getting people to add money to their savings, and then obviously everything that's in between. And when you are clear about setting expectations for this part of ROI, we're going to measure things like likability. We're going to measure things like brand buzz. We're going to measure things like social sentiment. And that's what the ROI is going to be. And for this level of investment over here, we're going to measure, cost per accounts and cost per funded accounts and cost per loans and those kinds of things. But that everything is like a cake. You can't take the flour out and get the cake to rise. Everything can't be performance marketing. If you really believe in wanting to grow a sustainable brand that is not just investing in short-term gain, but really playing the long game. And that's what we've talked about. And I think that's been something that's morphed over the 6 years of my tenure as CMO at Ally. From, when I took on the team, it was very performance driven. And we've moved to really realizing the value in building a strong brand that has longevity.
And then also within that is the data, right? And so that's that engagement and that strong brand, I would tack on based on everything that's happening, whether it's savings tools, whether it's all the different moments, is all the data that you're garnering that allows you to, again, kind of fuel some of that intersection.
Right. Like data's, I mean, look, data's gold, right?
We're actually no financial company.
Right. We're all after it. We all want it.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure out the best way to use it. In many ways, it's the new marketing currency. And for sure, we've got a wealth, an embarrassment of riches when it comes to data. But there's with that is great responsibility that comes with using the data the right way. And I think that, the data can tell you really interesting things, but also I have always been a big believer that the golden gut can tell you some really good things too. And the best brands create emotional resonance and don't simply let data drive every decision that they make.
Sure. To pivot a little bit, and when we talk about creating emotion, arguably connected television with, the sight, sound, and motion, and not to mention, this is a 2022. I mean, it is the year of CTV. Last year was the year of CTV, 2023. But anytime when there's just such an influx in the convergence, there's a lot of fragmentation and challenges. So would love to hear a little bit about your perspective on the connected TV landscape. And in particular, what do you foresee happening over the next year, 2 years, as marketers navigate this mass convergence that seemed to just happen at the start of the pandemic?
Yeah, look, the pandemic accelerated the appetite and the consumption of premium programming, and obviously, it has led to a massive shift towards CTV, where everybody's scrambling to get as much content as possible. Even myself, like when one of the shows I'm binging ends, I feel empty inside until I can figure out what the next binge is going to be. I'm currently on Righteous Gemstones, so for anybody that's listening, it's really good.
And what platform do you stream that on?
HBO. But I've got everything. I have Apple TV, HBO Max, Hulu, Peacock, Paramount. So you name it, we kind of have it in this house. And I do think that that's one of the interesting outcomes of CTV, right? But look, my perspective is it's not going anywhere. We've all become accustomed to this level of premium content. We all want this level of premium content. The networks are all building out their own platforms, whether it's Peacock, or obviously, or Hulu or Disney Plus. Obviously the networks are accelerating towards that, and it's really about, I think, using CTV to complement what you can't get in linear, and vice versa, right? Using linear to things like live sports. I don't care what anybody says, you're never going to be able to beat the performance, the buzz, the scale that things like live sports can drive. Look at the national championship game on Monday. Yep. 22 million viewers. You're just not going to be able to get that kind of scale in other places. And those are cultural moments that you can intersect. So I think for marketers, it's about finding the right level of investment in both. And it's about really using CTV to maximize exposure and not to over inundate the same person with the same message. Because if you think strategically, you could take a show, make it up 30 Rock. I mean, there's 5 different platforms you could go watch 30 Rock on. Absolutely. And if your brand is showing up in all of those places, you're probably driving a much higher CPM than you need to be. And so it's really, again, about using technology, being smart, finding the right platforms, using programmatic in the right ways, letting the data drive the distribution as much as you're using the data to drive the messaging and the content and the delivery of audiences. So it's not going anywhere. Marketers just have to get smart. They have to find the right partners. They have to develop the right strategies. And I think you're going to see streaming being purchased more and more in the upfronts. And I think that's going to grow to very healthy percentages over time that are really going to change the dynamic of the upfronts.
I absolutely agree. And I think, one could argue that the upfronts have, in this last year's, was even changed by CTV and
right.
influence of there, right? Like, I think we're already seeing a lot of that too. I'd love to pivot a little bit, and there've been questions coming in, and I want to encourage everybody to continue to ask questions. I'm trying to weave them in throughout.
You're doing good, Lisa. You're doing really good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Andrea is such a transparent speaker, so please keep them coming. And on that, I'm softening you up because I do want to talk a little bit about D&I and going back to that purpose-driven, do it right. Right. This is what Ally is known for. You're known to
Yep.
be a challenger, disruptor. It's all about doing it right. And the D&I efforts that you have as a brand are important to your brand, but I'd love to hear about why it's so important for your consumers and how you are looking to use creative technology data to really carry that through in 2022 to expand on your D&I efforts.
Yeah, I mean, our journey around DE&I has been a long one. It's not something that we just, woke up last year and said, oh, DE&I has to be important to us. It's been one that, our CEO, Jeff Brown, came in and at the same time as I came in as CMO. And one of the very first objectives that he said is that we have to supercharge our DE&I efforts, and that's evolved over time, right? And it's important because one, you have to have a diverse and inclusive culture within your company. We know empirically that that delivers just better business results, and you know, brands that are authentic about it are the brands that I think are seeing the most growth and are seeing the most resonance from a consumer output standpoint. I think that you know, obviously it's important to consumers. You can't discount the events of the last couple of years, and how people have brought forward a voice now to say, I won't accept anything less than a greater focus on DE&I, and they're looking for companies to fill the void that many feel have been left by government. And so brands have an incredible responsibility to step up and step into those shoes. And I think that we as marketers, we have to figure out ways that we can authentically intersect diverse cultures and not siphon off of diverse cultures.
Yes, I love
I
that.
think it's critically important. And so what we've tried to do is find ways to be culturally astute in the DE&I space and to take on hard conversations. So, you know, a couple of examples is our Moguls in the Making program. We're in the 4th year of that Moguls in the Making program. And the insight around that was the notion that venture-backed capital companies that are Black owned only get 1% of the money, the VC money that's being put into the ecosystem, and that's not right. And
No.
so somebody needs to create the next generation of moguls. And so we've partnered with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and we've created this Moguls in the Making program, reaching into historically Black colleges and universities and creating a competition where we mentor the students over the course of the weekend. We give them a societal problem, and they have to bring us a solution rooted in technology. And out of that, the winners get internships at Ally. We pay for a portion of their student loan costs. Many of them we've created a pipeline of diverse talent, as many of them have come when they graduate into Ally proper as employees. In fact, our last class of moguls created Fintropolis, which was the world in Minecraft,
Yeah.
that we launched 6 months ago, that has over 2 million downloads. So they're creating real impact in kids' lives, teaching them financial literacy. So, you know, like I said, our partnership with Warner, the Milestone Initiative, DC Comics, we signed up for a multi-year relationship with Warner to create the next generation of Black comic book creators, Black and diverse comic book creators. Could not be more proud of that. These are the kinds of things that we're seeking. They're the kinds of things where we're not just slapping a logo on something, but where you're actually creating economic viability, trajectory, and opening up new pathways for diverse people to have an opportunity to have financial success in their life.
Yes, it's not incredible, it's inspiring. And I think
Thank you.
also that connection of that, you know, building that through in the financial literacy, I mean, one would argue as well, like that's so important to help build generational wealth, and making that direct impact on diverse communities is necessary.
Absolutely.
So we only have a couple minutes left. And so for the group, I want to put Andrea on the spot just a bit, because I had watched a couple interviews with her that she gave at the beginning of January of 2021. And in one of those interviews, you had really talked about Ally and your year and thinking about 2021, and you use the words just dynamic, disruptive, and culturally astute. Are those the same words that you would describe 2022? And if not, what are your 3 words, and give us a why?
I think those are 3 good words. I mean, disruptive is always something that is just part of our core tenets, especially as what being, considering ourselves as a disruptor brand.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely disruptive. I think every brand is trying to be culturally astute right now. So maybe I would change that slightly to say more of culturally additive. Intersecting culture in a way that we can add value to the things that people already are being attracted to. And then I think for this year, probably the third word, and it's not a word, but it's this idea of seeing around corners. I think, pardon?
Can you expand on that? See around.
Yeah.
What do you mean
So
by
this
that?
idea that the world is so dynamic right now, the media landscape is so complex, the consumer is so overwhelmed and fatigued. Um, you know, we're in a new level of normalcy that many of us have never experienced in our entire lives, and it makes it hard to protect and navigate a brand. You have to know when to talk to people and when to leave them alone. You have to be able to have a pulse on the mood of the country at any given moment. I look at last year and I think about how many brands ruined themselves last year,
Uh-huh.
by just not having that ability to um, see or feel where consumer mindset is at. So this notion of seeing around corners, to me, is a really important one for a brand, not just in terms of brand protection, but in terms of brand acceleration. What's coming that we should be a part of? Where do we lean in? Where do we stay out? What can really accelerate the growth of the brand? Those are all the things that I'm really trying to be really in tune with this year.
Wow. That we'll call it your top phrase, but I love that. I think wow is the best way. Well, now this isn't the best follow-up because that was just such an incredible answer. But the other, question that you were asked was, what platform has your attention? And to the moderator's surprise, you said outdoor.
Yep.
So is it still outdoor? And if not, what platform has your attention for 2022?
Yeah. So that was in an interview with Gary Vaynerchuk, and he gave me so much crap about that ansur, but I would like to say
Yes,
for the
he did.
record,
It's a very fun 9 minutes for
it is.
those
I'd
on
like to
the
say for the
call.
record, I was right. Outdoor, I think, had the best growth in its history last year. If you look at the investment in outdoor last year, it was up about 400%, which is incredible. And it's still a platform that I absolutely love, because when you have a very visual brand like ours, you can show up in really significant ways. But platform that has my attention, look, everybody, of course, is looking at TikTok. But I don't want to just zero in on TikTok. I think I'm not sure it's a platform. I think it's a movement. And I think, to me, what has my is the creator environment. That's what's got my attention. Creator culture is going to change everything. It's going to change the way that brands are thought of. It's going to change the way brands are talked about. It already is. It could kill your brand, or it could accelerate your brand.
Sure.
It could save you millions of dollars, and it could allow you to get to market at the speed of the consumer. And so the whole notion of creator culture is fascinating to me. The rise of it and the utilization of it. The brands that really figure it out are the brands that are going to be setting themselves up for a pretty bright future.